right, hello. My name is Brodie, and I'm presenting my micro teach. This is a lesson intended for about 20 or 21 upper intermediate students. That's B23, the class that I'm currently teaching, who are all aged between 16 and 21 years old. And I would teach this lesson in a classroom, or since it's a presentation, I might teach it over a Zoom lesson. Okay, class, welcome all. We are going to continue with tenses today, and we're going to talk about the perfect progressive and perfect progressive tenses for the past. We are going to identify the different context in which you use each tense, so not just how you form it, but also when you use it. You're going to identify the appropriate time expressions to use with each tense. We'll get to that when we come to it. And you're going to apply this knowledge by writing a story about a day in your childhood. So I wanted to begin with this little story about myself. This is a true story, by the way. When I was 12, I was riding my bike in Maine when I fell off and landed on my wrist. My father took me to the hospital, where the doctor told me that my wrist was sprained and I would have to wear a splint. For days afterwards, my wrist was in pain. By the end of the trip, I had been suffering for 2 weeks from my sprained wrist. Before I hurt myself, my father had told me to be careful on my bike, but I had not listened. Yeah, so obviously this is a very sad story about myself, but I want to focus on these expressions that you see are bolded. Now, let's take this one expression, fell off. Can anybody tell me what tense that is? Right, so this is past simple, which we learned about last time, and obviously this is a story about something in the past, so I'm going to use past simple. But my question is, what about all of these other bolded expressions? Some of them are past simple, like took, told, was, and so on. But what about these others, like was writing or had been suffering? Yeah, so you can spot that this one is past continuous, this one is past perfect continuous, but how do we use these? Okay, so I'm going to begin with past progressive, and sometimes we say past continuous, sometimes you say past progressive. They mean the same thing. So past progressive is a tense that you use when you have a process in the past, as you can see here, that begins at some point. We may not know exactly when it begins, but we do know when it ends, or at least when it is interrupted. Now, the second event, which interrupts the process, is used with past simple. The process itself is described with past progressive. Here are some examples. I was working on my lesson plan when the aliens abducted me. Okay, so from the sounds of it, was I finished with my lesson plan? Probably not. I was still working on it. And that's why I say I was working. And then you may notice that I've colored in the when in green. What could we call that word? Yeah, it's a time expression. It's something that you use along with the tense to join it to the other event. And you'll also notice that since when is a conjunction, a subordinating conjunction, we can flip the sentence around and we can say, when the aliens abducted me, I was working on my lesson plan. And that means the same thing. Only if we do it that way, then we have to remember to include what? That's right, the comma. Very good. Okay, so past perfect progressive is a little bit different. It can be used in a similar way, except that one of the neat things this allows you to do is it allows you to specify the amount of time. So as you can see, in this case, we actually do know the first event. So for example, the sick old man had been dying for 2 weeks when I went to see him. Or, when I went to see him, the sick old man had been dying for 2 weeks. All right, so let's talk about the difference here. Was working, we have the auxiliary to be, and we have ing. And the auxiliary to be is what will change to show the tense. So you could say he is working, he was working, he will be working, but working is always going to stay the same. Here, the auxiliary have is what changes to show the tense. So you could say he had been dying, or he has been dying, or he will have been dying. But being dying is always going to remain the same. That's how you know it's perfect progressive. Finally, we come to past perfect. Now, past perfect we use when you have a first event and a second event, and the second event, which is past simple, tells you when the first event came to an end. So the sick old man had died by the time that the doctor arrived, versus by the time that the doctor arrived, the sick old man had died. So which of these happens first? That's right, the sick old man dying happens first, right? And then the second event is past simple, the doctor arrived. And you can join these with when as well, but I've chosen to join them with the time expression by the time that, which you can also use with these. You can say, the sick old man had been dying for 2 weeks by the time I went to see him. You could say, I was working on my lesson plan. Actually, you can't in that particular case. You have to use when. Okay, so now we have a pretty good understanding of the different tenses. Does anybody have any questions? So I want to see how well you can use these, and so you're going to do what I did. You're going to use a story from when you were 12 years old, and you're going to use a combination of past tenses to describe either processes that were interrupted or events that preceded other events. You will use each past tense at least once. So fell off, we've already said, is past simple. Was writing, what tense is that? That's past progressive. Very good. What about had been suffering? Past perfect progressive. Very good. What about I had not listened? Past perfect. Very good. So now we know the tenses of the story. Okay, so I look very much forward to hearing the stories that you tell, and you may begin, if there are no questions, now.